So you make mistakes. Oh, this is good. Go with it. You don't say, boy, your mistake is bad. You cannot do. You say, come, it's now you have to get better. That's it. This is how you do. And most of the time, because of this, you know they have made this mistake, you will not do it a second time. Okay, now I do it like this. So this is how you get to perfection.
Because in China, what happens is probably 60% of the students graduated from college, and then some of them choose to study masters. Very few ended up in doctoral studies. So, like, what is the experience of getting into these institutions? Like, and also in China, you have fixed years for finishing specific degrees and specific focus. So what is this experience of you going through, I imagine, probably 10 years of education from college to PhD?
It really depends on the topic you are choosing.
Yeah.
So for example, if you do an engineer, it also depends, electrical engineer or other engineers. It really depends what you are taking. But for example, in chemistry, I would say it's around 7 years going to university, and then PhD is 3 to 5 years. So you have 10 to 12 years of higher education.
The higher education experience, obviously you have to publish in order to graduate PhD, but what exactly is the experience? So the reason that I'm asking these questions is because I have no idea about the experience in Germany. I'm pretty sure that most of the Chinese students don't have any experience. In China, you go to university, primarily you do lectures, and then there's some labs. So graduating that, you do 2 years of masters. You choose your topic, but the first year is primarily lectures, pretty similar to the American postgraduate program. And then when you get to PhD, you choose your topic, and you have to publish every year, or probably every 2 years in order to qualify for that, credential.
Every 2 years would be nice, yeah. It's difficult. So it depends. In China, as far as I know, you have to publish every month. A lot of students I know, which work also at our institute, they have nearly every month a paper to publish.
So they publish 10 papers.
Yes, they publish and publish and publish.
That's amazing.
But I cannot speak for all, but only the ones I know. Every once they had to publish one paper.
Yeah.
So they were working very hard, much harder than me. I have to say like this. Yeah, I could go at 4 o'clock home, and some of them were still sitting there until the evening and working until 8.
So you're talking about the Chinese students studying
Chinese students, yes,
studying in Germany.
in this institute also.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and but in our case, so the PhD for me was like when I finish a work where I say, okay, I can publish something, I will go to my supervisor and tell him, okay, we can now write a paper. If he's okay, we do it. This is how it works. This is how it worked in Germany. Now it's different. They also changed. They also put a little bit more pressure. So you have to publish every 3 months or something like that. And also it depends on institutes. Ne? It's very different when you go from, even in the Max Planck Gesellschaft, you have different institutes, and it's very different where you go. So I cannot say.
Higher education in China is cheap, but it's not free. So when students are choosing these different schools, they have financial considerations. And my understanding is in Germany, higher education is largely free. So I wonder what priorities, when you make the choice, what are your priorities?
To choose. So when I think of the institute I chose, was really to get to the institute where I can really find the interest, my interest, that can really reflect the interest I'm in. So money-wise, in Germany it's not a problem because everything is free. And you get paid when you do your PhD. So this was never a problem. So money, no, never thought about this. This was, I have to say, in Germany, very nice. You don't need to think about money when you go for education.
So education is the priority when you make educational choices is first and foremost your interest, your research interest, you can choose whichever university you want to go.
Okay, there is something called the numerus clausus. So, for example, when you want to go into medicine, you need to be in school, you need to be nearly perfect. So you cannot just, when you were let's say in school, you had a C everywhere, you cannot do medicine. It's not possible. But there are some universities where it doesn't matter. So if you are better, you can choose more. If you are like not so good, you have to go to the university that gives you this topic.
My understanding is that the education, let's say basic education, is primarily um, a state matter, not a federal matter, right?
Yeah.
So kind of every state is different.
Yeah.
Now, you graduate your high school, let's say, so it's a state credential, right? Then how does it transit to the universities? And my understanding is there's also different kinds of higher educational institutes, right? There are more technical universities, there's more academic universities, and there's also vocational education. So if you're a high school leaver, you graduate from your state, how do you move on to get into these different universities, obviously, potentially in different states?
Also, this is not a problem. So you can apply to any university you want. There is no difference in this. So you can, if you are, like, say, in North Rhine-Westphalia and you want to go to Berlin, you can do. It's like you would be there. So there's no problem with this. This is interconnected.
And then when you apply for the universities, what do they consider to admit you as a student? Because you mentioned that in medical schools, they do have standards, right? So what do they look into when they admit you as a student?
Also different from university to university. If you go to Munich, for example, they will invite you. You have an interview and so on. If you go to Aachen, for example, for engineering, they look at your thing. Do we have a space? Yes, you can come.
Does he also apply, these different criteria? Do they also apply to international students?
Yes. They also do the same. They also, sure, as an international student, you also have to, you need your academics to be compatible to the German system. You have to make it somehow compatible. But there I cannot say so much. I don't know how it works. But you cannot come and say, here is my stuff and I want to start to study. You have to do something up front. But I'm not 100% sure how this works.
So you mentioned that some of the Chinese students studying there are pretty hardworking. They go to the library. They probably publish a paper every month.
Yeah.
But then you mentioned you probably go home at 4. So what is a ordinary day like for a PhD student in Germany?
Ordinary life, I would say, also depends on the day. Sometimes you have meetings, but also not too many. You have meetings with a professor most of the time. And starting experiments in the morning. Normally you start your experiment, then you write your stuff, what you have done, perhaps you write on your paper, you go back to the experiment. Later you have perhaps a meeting, and that's it. I would say that's like the day of a PhD.
And then the meetings with your professors, are they so I'm trying to understand, because in China, all of these they use the credit system, but the courses are designed so that you follow the courses. Kind of you follow the process. It seems like, that based on my understanding and also your description, that there seems to be a lot of freedom.
Yeah, freedom is very important. Yeah.
So you can basically direct what you want to study. You have a lot of say over what you want to study and what you want to do.
So the topic is given from the professor. You have a supervisor. This supervisor is your link to the professor. So he will tell you, okay, what you have to do, what you have to improve, and so on. But in this field, you have freedom to do. You have even freedom to check for your own time. You have the freedom how you do the experiments and so on. So this is how it works. And the supervisor have to check, okay, does it make sense or not? If he sees, okay, something doesn't make sense, you will change the way how you do your work.
And the resources are going to be directed towards your own decisions.
Yes, exactly.
No, that's interesting.
Like I said, it depends which institute you go. I had the luck that for me it was like this. I worked with some very big companies and they gave us money. And then we checked, okay, does it work or not? And I was really trying everything. It was very broad, my research field, from organic chemistry to physical chemistry. And then I checked, okay, does this work? Does this work? We order this catalyst, we order this. So yeah, in my case, it was very free. But there are others, everything is directed. They have to go, they have to work, they have to do. So it really depends a lot.
So the decision to, let's say, to do some kind of academic subject is actually a decision made at, let's say, at the exit of the high school, right? Because some of the students choose to go to an engineering technical school, and some decided to go to, academia, more academic colleges, and some decide to go to these vocational colleges. So, like, I wonder, how was that decision made when you were in high school? Because in China, what happens is you have this national exams, pretty similar to the SATs or the A levels. Now, using that score, you apply for the university. Now the quotas are given to the provinces. So kind of, Peking University, how many people, Jianghua University, how many people, right? So you kind of do the test and use the test score to apply for these universities. Now there's more freedom. There's material that you can submit to support your application, but places are very competitive, so you have to be very strategic and make your decisions. Now, there's obviously more freedoms, but you have to make a decision, So how was that decision made in high school?
In high school, so the decision for me came after high school. You have to see that the things have changed because when I started university is already 24 years ago.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah. So in this, after school, you didn't think about this because you had also 1 year of military service.
Okay.
And during this year, you were making up your mind after school. Because in school, it's not so easy to make up your mind. You need a little bit time. And after this, I said, okay, I will study physics. Because first I started with physics and then I ended up chemistry. And I was also thinking to go on a Fachhochschule, these engineering schools you were talking about. And but in the end, I found out during my studies in physics that I like chemistry more. And then I changed. So for me, it's perhaps a little bit special. I made up my mind during the studies and then I changed to the right topic.
Yeah. So how was that decision technically made? My understanding is that there's quite a difference between science and engineering, right? Now, so you made the decision to enter science, but at the very beginning, you wanted to do engineering. So how was that decision technically made?
Technically, it was like, like I said, I could also do chemical engineering, but because I saw a great interest in the fundamental chemistry, this was the idea for me to go, okay, I will go to university and I will do it like this. So, and physics, you can only go to university. So this is why I said, okay, I will go to university because I'm also interested in physics. And but I like more the approach of a chemist to everything than a physical thing. So there's two different approaches, and some people are more on the chemical and some are more on the physical, and I'm more on the chemical side to go there like this approach. So
it's more a process of exploration. Now, even with the freedom in Germany, there's also practical considerations too, right? Like you said, all these different subjects are provided at different institutions or not. So kind of you made a decision based on your self-discovery and also the practical considerations. Now, so you mentioned that students, so you made the decision not right before you finish high school, but after high school, or after working for a period of time, or what?
yeah, like I said, I had this military service to do, which you don't have anymore.
Okay.
And during this work, yes. And even at university, I still worked.
So what do you think about the students these days, like in Thailand, in China, in America, these kids, they probably in America they do a gap year, but it's not very common to do a gap year here in Eastern Asia, like China, Thailand. They finish high school. Now is actually the application season. To talk about it, actually, in China next month, we're going to have the National College Entrance Exam, 3 days, very intense 3 days packed with a lot of exams. So you make your decision during military service. And what do you think about this time after high school to think about? Do you think um, the Chinese and the Thai experience of choosing university before finishing high school is viable, or
Yes, definitely it's good, but not for all. So there should be people who have time after high school, and there should be students who should directly go. You can see it in school. There's, for example, Chinese. Let's talk about Chinese students. We at my school we have some Chinese students. You can directly see they can directly go to university. You have other Chinese students. They need a year more to make up their mind. So there should be the possibility for a student to say, okay, I need 1 year more. Let me work somewhere or something like this. This should be possible. But there should be some others directly go to university. So I see these two.
in China, what normally happens is if you don't go into university, your scores are a little bit low. Then what you do, or maybe the university of your choice is not, didn't admit you, right? So then what you do is you take the test next year.
Yeah.
And then, for this year, you prepare for the exams and you kind of do the next year. But I think it's relatively harder. I don't know about the system in Thailand. Um, so the European experience seems to be, or the German experience seems to be a lot of autonomy, a lot of freedom. So you mentioned freedom is very important. So this autonomy, but for some people, the autonomy might lead to, let's say, laziness, right? Let's say procrastination. So for you, what is the experience of having this freedom?
Yeah, the laziness is a big topic, that's for sure. But this year, so yeah, I had other experiences. So I think it is, like I said, for some people, it is important to make these other experiences before you go to your real path to see other parts of the world. Yeah. I think if I would have gone to university directly after my school, it would have not been so good. So this year really helped me to clear up my mind and to check. Um, yeah,
See, I feel the same, quite similar, because I finished my master's after working for a few years,
yeah,
and obviously, during the time that I worked, I figured out what is important, what is not important for me to move on. Um, so, talking about basic education, primary school, middle school, high school, I can tell you about the Chinese primary school experience. You go to school, you come back home at probably, I don't know, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. There's some after school activities. And then you spend probably 4 or 5 hours doing homework. And we're talking about 7, 8, 9-year-old kids. I know some examples of kids not going to bed before midnight. So that's and then if you look at the homework, a lot of them are drills, repetitive in a way, especially if you study, the Chinese characters, right? You have to write
yeah,
the same Chinese character probably 20 times, and you do, probably 10 characters. You look at the mathematics, it's primarily drills, right? Addition, like 20 questions of this, same nature, and then you just do them. And then these assignments are monitored like very strictly. So you go, second day, you go to school, you have to show your teacher that you've done all of them. If you don't, the teachers are going to, I wouldn't say publicly humiliate you, but they kind of make it very clear that you haven't done your job. So this is from primary school. And then middle school and high school, even more. Your scores are going to be displayed publicly. There's a ranking. So the, top ranking students are obviously praised for their whatever. So it's still like that.
yeah.
What is the experience of basic education in Germany?
So we don't have this. It's not allowed to publicly announce the grades of students. Yeah, you cannot. And even if in university, if you are searching for your grade in university, because you cannot show you have like 500 students when you have the table. Before it was like this. Now you will see it on internet. Yeah. But before it was like this. You have your number. It's called matrikel number, and you search for your number. You have your grade, so nobody can knows your name, for example. So everything is anonymous. And
Do you spend a lot of time working out the problems? And I mean, obviously, you give your students homework, right?
not too much. In chemistry, yes, but I tend to give homework when I see that there's a topic they're not so good in. Then I give homework. But normally, we do our homework together at school.
So, what do you think about, from the teacher's perspective and also from your personal experience that the drills, the questions that you give your students, do you think they're helpful? Like, so you kind of give your students targeted questions, right? But in China, in Thailand, they usually give generic homework, right? Like everyone does the same thing.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? You think it's helpful?
Everybody does the same. I'm not sure the drilling. Yes, sure. In some cases, it might help. Yeah, for if there are some classes, they for sure need this. But first of all, in Thailand, you cannot do this. Anyway, they don't want. So the first thing here in Thailand is more like it's about the happiness of the students. So a student must be happy, and then we can talk about the education. So yeah, like I said, it's hard. So I don't know. I would say it's better to have really these targeted questions and yeah, let them
Like how do you? My understanding is because in high school, I did really well in science subjects, but physics and mathematics better than chemistry. Part of the problem that I have with chemistry is that we have to memorize a lot of things. Um, the elements, their properties, even the colors. When you do the reactions, there's color changes. You have to remember the colors, but helps you if you actually do the lab and you can see the process. But in like China has this supply problem, which is there's only one lab, but there's like 500 students, so you don't normally do the labs. So I think that's my problem with chemistry. Is like a lot of things have to be memorized. Now, obviously, you can't memorize those things if you don't do a lot of questions. So, but you obviously you finished your PhD, so I imagine that you know a lot about this area, but you don't do a lot of these questions. So how do you get there to be able to understand a subject very deeply, but at the same time do not involve yourself in mechanical recitations or whatever?
So, for example, a lot of, I don't know if it's still done, but a lot of teachers before, they said, okay, you have to know the periodic table from hydrogen to what is the organesson and so on. But I think it's lost time. So you can also just take and print out the periodic table and check what you need information. It's good to know the groups and so, but to know everything, no. So yes, there are some things you should know. Like in organic chemistry, you should know some name reactions. But the rest should better not be known, but understood.
Yeah.
So let's say I want to know what would carbon do with chlorine in this and this reaction. You should better understand that chlorine has, for example, some space in its orbitals to fill it up with some electrons, and chlorine wants to give carbon some electrons. So you can just drill it and then tell them 1,000 times, okay, chlorine will make a combination with a reaction with carbon, or you can just make them understand, okay, this and this will happen, and then they can do it themselves. This is what I say.
So you figured this out. So you understand that the principle is more important than the details many times. Did you figure this out yourself, or this is the German way of teaching science?
So I figured out in the beginning of my chemistry studies, I was really bad. I always, because I'm not a person who reads books and then can repeat what is in the books and these things. I'm not a person like this. So I really figured out, I have really to understand what's happening there, and then I can go into my exams and do. So the first two, 3 semesters, I really had problems. And then I figured, oh no, you really have to understand the basics. If you don't know something, it's not a problem. But if you have understood what they're asking, then you are the winner. So, and if you really understand this, make the students understand this, and then it's good. They need perhaps half time of work.
Now, this is also something quite interesting because the Chinese culture emphasizes the head start, that you have to, like, for example, my friend is coming to Chiang Mai for just about a month, and then everyone is telling him that you should enroll your kids into these English classes because you got to have a head start. Now, the story that you just told me, like, at the very beginning, you were starting somewhere, but you were not the top. But then, again, this comes to your credential as a PhD. So it takes many, many years for you to become really good. But this takes a particular kind of mentality, obviously, or attitude towards education is a long-term process and benefit, instead of saying, look, this month, you got to be really good at these. So where do you think that attitude comes from? That, things take time, another thing is, that I'm not really good about this now doesn't really mean that I'm not about to be really good in a month or in a year. That there's, this growth mindset there. Because I can tell you, for a lot of Chinese, if you're not really good now, next month is not really good. This is why I give you all of these courses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you think that mindset comes from?
It came also, I have to think, from the professors, and even more from the supervisors. I don't know how you call this in English. You always had like the group of students, and then you had one other higher students who led the students into the lab. And the ideas came from them, I have to say, okay, come, just think differently about these things. And sometimes banging your head against the wall will not work. But sometimes, yes. Sometimes you break the wall if your head is strong enough. And I think this happened. So I said, okay, now let's really understand the things, and let's take away the forest where you cannot see anything anymore. And let's just really think about the thing in detail. And this is how it came. So it was really an influence from outside with my inner self to say, okay, come.
How much would you contribute your, let's say, educational achievement to the system? How much would you attribute it to yourself?
50-50, for sure. The educational system, like I said, I cannot say now, but it seems still to be very good. I would say it's very good in Germany. It helps a lot.
So you have concerns about contemporary German education?
Yes, because what I see now, since they made it so internationally, the special German thing which was there before, I think it's a little bit gone. So the freedom is gone now. They also you have to go there, you have to do this, I think it's not so good. Before you had the freedom, you had more creativity. The creativity is a little bit lost. Yeah.
So now it's all systems.
Yeah, it's all
have
systems.
to follow
Yeah.
this. Yeah, exactly. Interesting. Now, is the still coming, to basic education? Like, my understanding is that even if you have state education, and then each state has its own credentials, different choices, different kinds of schools. But I think your secondary education is divided into two parts. The first part is lower secondary, which is, the foundations. But you have to make a choice or some kind of choice in the upper secondary, right?
Yeah.
So that choice was made, you found that perhaps you would go for more academic stuff, and then you chose that direction. And this is why you would eventually end up in university. Otherwise, you would go another direction. So what was that decision like? Because in China, we have something called the high school entrance exam. That's exactly when you make that decision. You choose which high school you go to. Because high schools are not basic education or mandatory educations in China. Unlike many states in Germany, mandatory education is 12 years, right? We go from primary school to secondary. For Chinese, after you finish lower secondary, you're done. You, like, it's not mandatory anymore. So you have to make your own choice if you want to go to high school or if you want to go to a vocational high school, or you just, give up school and start working. It's up to you. So that decision is also made, but it's made out of an exam. Now, so how did he make that decision?
So it's a very different philosophy because in China, it's like you said, no, you have to make an exam to enter the university. In Germany, I think when you also look at the great scientists before, it's not that. I mean, it has changed also again. Like I said, with medicine, for example, but it's not when you are bad in school, you are bad in university. So it doesn't mean that a bad student in school cannot be very good in a special topic in university. This is why these exams don't really exist. So you finish your school, you try to have a good grade, and then you choose yourself. You don't go to university and make an exam there. This is what, at least in my time, and I think it's still like this. So you choose, you check, okay, do they have a free space? Okay, you get a yes, and you can go there. This is how it works.
So you mentioned something actually quite important. Your secondary or basic education achievements do not predict your, let's say, research achievements or educational achievements at higher educational institutions.
Yeah.
So you mentioned this is a difference in philosophy. I think that's exactly what it is, because a lot of Chinese do think that your school achievements predict your college achievements. So can maybe a little bit more on that philosophy? Why doesn't it work?
So when you see, big scientists like Albert Einstein, for example, they always say about something math, it's not true, but his grades were like middle, where you think, okay, this is not a great student. There are others. What is with the Apple guy? I think
Steve Jobs?
yeah, his grades were also not so good. So even if he was not German, but yeah, this is more the philosophy to say, okay, they can have the chance to do it. Let's see. If they cannot do it, they will fail. They will see it then. So yeah.
So one thing that you mentioned is, I think, is also very relevant to the Chinese psyche, is the tolerance for mistakes. So when you mentioned that there's more freedom, there's actually more freedom or more tolerance for making mistakes, and that you can have a second chance. So now you're saying that it's kind of shrinking, right, that tolerance. In China, mistakes are not tolerated easily. More and more, let's say, higher income families are able to tolerate more mistakes for their children. So there's a socioeconomic dynamic there. But from a scientific perspective, like, or from your study and research, like, how important is it for the tolerance in the States?
Yeah, you learn from mistakes. This is it. So mistakes are something good. This is in Germany, you think like this. The mistake is good. So now you can learn from your mistake and get better.
How did you, like, that philosophy or that kind of mindset? As I wonder, where does that come from? So you mentioned Einstein. Obviously, you have the anecdotes. Like, these stories are told by your teachers or what?
Well, okay, you read about it. I read a lot about these things also. But it is really the German mindset. So you make mistakes. Oh, this is good. Go with it. You don't say, boy, your mistake is bad. You cannot do. You say, come, it's now you have to get better. That's it. This is how you do. And most of the time, because of this, you have made this mistake. You will not do it a second time. Okay, now I do it like this. So this is how you get to perfection. Yeah.
Would you say that for, how would you evaluate, that? Because you're teaching in Thailand, right? The tolerance for mistakes in Thai education, is that something that is practiced?
In Thai education, maybe, yeah, I think they also do. So, for example, when I have a student who says something wrong, I will never tell him, oh, it's wrong. I will tell him, okay, it's perhaps not 100% right, but we can do something out of this. Yeah, so, yeah, I would say yes.
So would you say that strong growth mindset is, like you said, is how Germans think. So you would characterize that as a German psyche.
Yes, I would say so.
Interesting. It's very interesting. It's a quite different mindset or philosophy.
It is very different. Yeah.
It is quite.
This is also why when you work with Chinese Student Institute, you always think, "Paul, don't stress yourself so much. It's okay. Next day it will be better." This is what you say to them. And yeah, it is really a very different mindset.
Mm.
Yeah.
So the Chinese, let's say, science and engineering are growing in its competence and in its quality, obviously, right? You have some Chinese students here in Chiang Mai.
Yeah.
Like, how would you evaluate this? Like, not something negative, I would say. Like, how would you evaluate their, let's say, mindset in learning and their performance, perhaps?
Evaluate. So I really check if the understanding is there by, for example, giving them wrong answers to a question to see if they will react to this. Yeah, so I really evaluate the understanding. This is what I do. And then I check, okay, can he do, can he not do something like this? Yeah. And I also check, so I have, for example, students, they're a little bit slower, they're a little bit faster. So yeah, this is how it works.
It's actually interesting because most of the teachers, I would say, they're very good at generic teaching methodology. They adopt a particular kind of way of teaching and they just follow it. They don't actually pay attention to students' understanding like that much. Especially if you have a group of students, you usually target the middle part in the distribution, right? So especially in public schools. But once you start focusing on the students' understanding, you would really help with their learning. Now, question is that you received a PhD. Now, this is also a Chinese kind of mentality. So you mentioned postdocs, right? And you mentioned that you can have a second PhD. But again, in the linear thinking of Chinese, this is the jewel of your education. Once you have a PhD, you're probably done. You get into academia, or you land yourself in a very good position in one of the big companies. So why choosing to come to Thailand? Because I'm pretty sure that if you work in Germany, like you can work in a big company. You graduated from one of the leading research institution in the world. You can land your job anywhere. So why coming to Thailand?
Yeah, so after my PhD, first I wanted to do some holidays. This is no. And then I decided to so my case is a little bit special. Because I decided to also change a little bit, and I became also a diver in between. Scientific diver also. And and then in Thailand I decided to fulfill my dreams a little bit. So I went to this diving I did. I went to a monastery to do some meditation and so on. And after some time, I felt that Thailand is a country where you have no stress. In Germany, in all these countries like Germany, France, I think China too, US, it's very stressful, the life. And in Thailand, it's like my paradise. So nothing matters. It's like this, it was very important for me. Also, for teaching, it's better to be in a country like this because also the students are not stressed. If the teacher is not stressed, the students are not stressed, and so on. And during my diving experience, I also felt, okay, wow, teaching is also something nice. You can teach the people. And yeah, and then I said, I have a chemistry PhD. Why not do this? And then I tried this. This is how it came to this. Yeah.
A lot of Chinese would consider this to be, in your case, let's say that your qualifications or you overqualified for a job like this.
Oh, yeah.
Did you experience this in your job interviews or whatever? Like, is that something that the Thai employees would consider that you're overqualified for our school?
No. They see it and they say, wow, just a PhD, this is pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. Let's take him. They never, or I had never a student who says, why you are a teacher now? You have a PhD. Some of them know it. Never this question. Never.
Is that a German psyche to be ไม่เป็นไรใจเย็น is that a German psyche or it's more like
So my
yeah ไม่เป็นไร
No, this is Thai.
this is Thai.
I know German. No.
So you would characterize yourself as atypical German in this particular respect. That it's not critical German psyche because there's a stereotype about German and German people in China, which is that German people are they talk about the punctuation, right? They're very punctual. They're like
Yeah, everything's important.
yeah. So you have to follow the rules. You have to go, punch your card. You have to do your job, fulfill your responsibility. My life is not something that is accepted. And so, like, is that you're like, I try to understand, like, as you're, it's not the German psyche, right? Thai culture is quite different from the German culture.
Yeah. But I'm also not fully German. I'm half French. So I had a mother who also gave me a little bit the French side. So for me, it was more easier than like a full German, perhaps, to understand the Thai way of living. So, and I was also not really happy with this rule thing and all. It's not something I like. So this is why I changed it. Yeah. I like more the Asian style. Yeah.
So this conversation that I had with my British friends, Phil, a few days ago, he was talking about if there's a perfect life, it would be Thailand. He thinks he's more Thai than British. So it seems like, that we also have stereotypes for people coming to Thailand, but obviously, based on these two isolated cases, I would say that there's the possibility that you find a place where your personality matches the environment. The Thai culture provides a very laissez-faire kind of lifestyle that is suitable for a particular kind of personality, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's actually quite interesting. It's so now you're teaching in international high school, and you're teaching chemistry and physics, right? So, what is your teaching style like?
Yeah, so like I said before, it's really based on understanding. So I try to also follow the books because schools want this a little bit that you have every topic like taken. But I really try to go also with my experience. Did I have my problems during my university time? So to really understand why. Let's take some examples. Why an atom is doing this, why it's becoming an ion, that they really understand these basics. So, and when they have these basics, they have a little bit more freedom, the students also, to say, what do you want to do today? What do you want to do tomorrow? But yeah, the basics must be there. So this is my style to really see, okay, the understanding.
I'm pretty sure that a lot of your colleagues teaching science, they have a teaching degree in science, right? PG, like the British qualification, for example. So you're more scientific minded, right? But you were not trained as a teacher, so but now you're in teaching. Do you see that this is a somehow as an advantage to be more? Obviously, you're more trained in science than most of these teacher qualification trained teachers, right? So do you see that as an advantage? But at the same time, there's a difference between doing science yourself and teaching science, right? So do you see this? What are the challenges that you see as this job as you transition from perhaps a full-time scientist to a full-time teacher?
So first question is like, is it an advantage? So in the beginning, not. In the beginning, as a scientist in teaching, the students are also like, wow, what is he asking there? It's hard to really come to the level of somebody who has never heard of these things. As a teacher, you know how to do in the beginning. And I first had to come to the mindset and to the level of the students to see, okay, you need to go slower. Now I would say easy, it's good, but I needed like 1 to 2 years. And then I think you have an advantage because you know more into detail. You don't need to look the books. I don't read books. Normally, 90% of the time I'm teaching, I don't look in a book. I only look in the book sometimes to see what they're doing, but I don't need any book. And this is good because it shows to the students, oh, okay, he knows. I can ask him anything. The second one, what was it?
So, yeah, the advantage of being a scientist as a teacher.
Yeah.
I think the second question is, how did you learn to become a teacher, right? Or to be teaching really well. I think you kind of, yeah. But that's actually quite interesting because the way that you describe it as the authority of knowledge, because you did do science thoroughly. And I understand how difficult it is to do a PhD in technical subject area. So, very unexpected to see that the German psyche has this very, let's say, not very serious aspect, which is to give you the opportunity to grow, which is quite different from the Chinese psyche, I would say. They say over serious in their or over parenting, especially considering their children's education, I would say. It's pretty interesting and very nice conversation. And first time meeting you in person. We've talked online many times. I've enjoyed the conversation. I hope that we can talk about this, man, more next time.
We can go more into details. That's fine. Yeah. So
Cool.
all right.
Thank you. Thank you. That's really nice.
Thank you very much too.
Yeah.